I want to start with a simple truth that most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. The greatest enemy you will ever face is not out there in the world. It is not the economy. It is not your boss. It is not your competitors. It is not the people who doubt you. The greatest enemy you will ever face lies between your two ears, your own mind. Now that may sound harsh at first, but I want you to listen carefully, because once you understand this idea, your entire life can change. Your mind can be your greatest servant or your worst master. And if you do not deliberately train it, discipline it, and direct it, it will quietly work against you every single day. Before we go any further, let me ask you something important. Have you ever noticed how your mind sometimes talks you out of the very things that could improve your life? You think about starting that business, and suddenly your mind says, what if it fails? You think about pursuing a bigger goal, and your mind whispers, you're not ready. You want to change your habits, and your mind convinces you to wait until tomorrow. If you've experienced this, I want you to write one word in the comments below: mindset. Because the moment you become aware of this internal battle, you begin to gain power over it. Let me explain something that changed my life years ago. Your mind is designed for survival, not success. This is a fact backed by decades of psychological research. Your brain is constantly scanning for danger, uncertainty, and risk. It wants to keep you safe. It wants to keep you comfortable. It wants to keep everything exactly the way it is. But success does not live in comfort. Growth does not live in safety. Opportunity does not live inside your comfort zone. So when you try to grow, your mind reacts as if you are stepping into danger. It begins producing fear, doubt, excuses, procrastination. All of these are mental defense mechanisms designed to pull you back into safety. And if you are not aware of this process, you will think those thoughts are reality. But they are not reality. They are simply untrained mental patterns. I learned early in my career that successful people are not people who never experience negative thoughts. Successful people experience the same doubts, the same fears, the same inner resistance as everyone else. The difference is simple. They do not obey those thoughts. They question them. They challenge them. They override them. One of the greatest discoveries in modern psychology is something called the self-concept. Your self-concept is the collection of beliefs you hold about yourself. It is how smart you think you are, how capable you believe you are, how deserving of success you feel. And here is the powerful truth. Your self-concept controls your performance in almost every area of life. If you believe you are capable, your mind begins searching for solutions. If you believe you are limited, your mind begins searching for excuses. The mind always works to prove itself right. So if you wake up every morning telling yourself, I'm not ready, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, your brain immediately starts gathering evidence to support that belief. You begin noticing every mistake, every failure, every criticism, and suddenly it feels like the world is confirming your limitations. But here's the fascinating part. The opposite is also true. When you deliberately program your mind with stronger beliefs, your brain begins searching for evidence of your potential. This is why the most successful people in the world are extremely careful about what they allow into their minds. They guard their thoughts the same way a fortress guards its gates. Because every thought you repeat becomes a mental instruction. Every thought you accept becomes a belief. And every belief eventually becomes behavior. Let me give you an example. Imagine two people who experience the exact same failure. One person says, this proves I'm not capable. The other person says, this is feedback. Now I know what to improve. Same event. Two completely different mental interpretations. And those interpretations create two completely different futures. Your mind is constantly interpreting reality. But until you master it, it often interprets reality in the most negative possible way. This is called negative bias. Psychologists have proven that the human brain naturally pays more attention to problems than opportunities. We remember criticism more than praise. We notice risks more than possibilities. We replay failures more than victories. This is not a flaw. It is an ancient survival mechanism. But in the modern world, that same mechanism can quietly destroy your confidence, your ambition, and your ability to take action. If you do not consciously train your mind, it will default to doubt. It will default to fear. It will default to limitation. That is why mental discipline is one of the most important skills you can ever develop. And here is something I want you to really think about. Your life today is largely the result of the thoughts you repeated yesterday. Your habits, your income, your relationships, your health, they are all influenced by the patterns inside your mind. Change the patterns and you change your life. But here is where most people make a mistake. They try to change their results without changing their thinking. They want better outcomes without upgrading their mindset. That never works for long because your mind always pulls your life back toward your dominant beliefs. If deep down you believe success is difficult, you will create obstacles. If deep down you believe you are capable of extraordinary things, you will start seeing opportunities everywhere. Your mind is like a powerful engine, but an engine without a driver can crash. And most people spend their lives letting random thoughts drive their behavior. Let me tell you something I learned after studying thousands of successful individuals. High achievers are not mentally perfect, but they are mentally intentional. They decide what they will think about. They decide what beliefs they will strengthen. They decide what voices inside their mind deserve attention. And over time, that discipline creates enormous power. The truth is, your mind will produce thousands of thoughts every single day. Some of those thoughts will empower you. Some will weaken you. But the key principle is this: you do not have to believe every thought you think. Let me say that again because it is incredibly important. You do not have to believe every thought you think. Many of your thoughts are simply echoes of past experiences, old criticism, old fears, old programming. They are not facts. They are habits, and habits can be changed. When you begin questioning negative thoughts instead of accepting them, something remarkable happens. You create mental freedom. Instead of being controlled by your mind, you begin controlling it. Instead of reacting automatically, you begin responding deliberately. And that shift, that simple shift, is where real personal power begins. But here is the challenge. Mastering your mind requires awareness, and awareness requires honesty. You have to start noticing the conversations happening inside your head. Notice when your mind says, I can't. Notice when it says, I'm not ready. Notice when it says, maybe later. Because those small mental whispers often determine the direction of your entire life. Most people never notice them. They simply follow them. But the moment you notice them, you gain a choice. You can question them. You can challenge them. You can replace them. And that is the beginning of mental mastery. Let me ask you another question. How many opportunities have you missed because your mind convinced you to hesitate? How many goals have you postponed because your mind told you the timing wasn't right? How many dreams have you quietly set aside because a voice inside your head said you weren't ready yet? Think about that for a moment. Because the real tragedy is not failure. Failure is temporary. The real tragedy is never taking action because your mind created fear before you even tried. And here is the good news. Your mind can be trained. Just like a muscle, it becomes stronger with deliberate practice. Every time you challenge a limiting belief, you weaken it. Every time you take action despite fear, you gain confidence. Every time you replace a negative thought with a constructive one, you reshape your mental patterns. Over time, those small victories transform your entire identity. You begin seeing yourself differently. You begin acting differently. You begin expecting more from yourself and from life. And once that shift begins, the results can be extraordinary. But it all starts with a decision. A decision to stop letting your mind run on autopilot. A decision to become the director of your thoughts instead of the victim of them. Because until you master your mind, it will quietly master you. And most people never realize this is happening. They blame circumstances. They blame luck. They blame the economy. But the real battle has always been internal. And the moment you start winning that internal battle, the external world begins to change in ways you never imagined. In the next part, I want to show you exactly how your mind secretly sabotages your progress and the powerful mental strategies you can use to take control of it. But before we continue, I want you to do something simple. If this message resonates with you, write this in the comments. I control my mind. Because the moment you start declaring it, you begin moving one step closer to making it true. And trust me, the transformation that follows is far more powerful than most people ever realize. Let me continue with something that most people never realize until it has already held them back for years. Your mind has a very clever way of protecting you from discomfort, even if that protection quietly destroys your potential. I've seen this pattern over and over again in people from every background, every profession, and every level of success. The mind creates what I call invisible barriers. These barriers are not physical. No one else can see them, but they feel completely real to the person experiencing them. And these barriers usually show up in the form of very convincing thoughts. I'll start when I'm more confident. I just need a little more time. Maybe this goal is too big for me. At first, these thoughts sound reasonable. In fact, they often sound logical. But if you examine them carefully, you'll notice something interesting. They always lead to the same outcome: delay. The mind loves delay because delay keeps you safe. When you delay taking action, you avoid the possibility of embarrassment, rejection, criticism, or failure. Your brain interprets that avoidance as success. But in reality, every delay strengthens the mental habit of hesitation. And hesitation is one of the greatest enemies of achievement. I often tell people this: success favors speed. Not reckless speed, but decisive action. The world rewards people who move. Opportunities rarely wait for someone who is overthinking every possibility. And overthinking is one of the mind's favorite sabotage strategies. Your mind will analyze an idea so long that the energy behind it disappears. You start with excitement. Then your mind starts asking questions. What if this doesn't work? What will people think? What if someone else is better? What if I fail? Each question slowly drains your motivation, and eventually the idea fades away before it ever becomes action. I've watched brilliant people lose incredible opportunities simply because they allowed their minds to turn action into endless analysis. Now, let me share an important truth. Action creates clarity. Thinking alone rarely does. Many people believe they must feel confident before they act. But in reality, confidence almost always comes after action. You try something, you learn from it, you improve, you try again. Confidence grows from experience, not from waiting. Your mind often tries to reverse this process. It says once you feel ready, then act. But readiness is often an illusion. If you wait until you feel perfectly prepared, you may wait forever. Successful people understand this. They move forward even when they feel uncertain. They take the first step even when the entire path isn't visible. And with each step, the path becomes clearer. Another way your mind works against you is through what psychologists call mental replay. Your brain loves replaying past events, especially negative ones. A mistake you made, something embarrassing you said, a failure that still bothers you. For many people, these memories replay again and again like a loop. And every time they replay, the mind strengthens the emotional impact. This creates a powerful psychological effect. You begin associating action with pain. Your brain says, remember what happened last time. So it convinces you to avoid similar situations in the future. But here's the problem. Every successful person in the world has made countless mistakes. Failure is not evidence of incapability. Failure is information. It tells you what works. It tells you what doesn't. And more importantly, it builds resilience. But if your mind constantly replays the emotional pain of failure, instead of the lesson inside it, you never extract the value from the experience. You only keep the fear. And fear without learning becomes limitation. This is why mastering your internal dialogue is absolutely critical. Your internal dialogue is the conversation you have with yourself all day long. You may not notice it consciously, but it is constantly shaping your mood, your decisions, and your behavior. If that voice is constantly critical, doubtful, and negative, your energy drops. Motivation drops. Your confidence drops. But when you deliberately change that internal dialogue, something powerful happens. Your mind begins working for you instead of against you. Now let me show you a simple but powerful shift. Instead of asking yourself negative questions like, what if I fail? Ask constructive questions like, what can I learn from this? Instead of saying, I'm not ready, ask yourself, what is the next small step I can take? Your brain is designed to answer questions. Whatever question you give it, it will search for an answer. So when you ask empowering questions, you direct your brain towards solutions. Another sabotage pattern your mind uses is comparison. Your mind constantly compares your progress to the progress of others. You see someone who is ahead of you, someone who seems more successful, someone who appears more confident, and your mind immediately creates a dangerous story. They're better than me. They're more talented. They have advantages I don't have. But comparison is one of the fastest ways to destroy momentum. Because when you compare your beginning to someone else's middle, you create discouragement. What you don't see is the years of struggle behind their progress. You don't see the mistakes, the late nights, the uncertainty, the persistence. Every successful person started where you are now. They simply kept moving forward. Your mind hides the truth from you. It only shows you the finished result. And that illusion can stop people before they even begin. Instead of comparison, I encourage people to focus on progress. Ask yourself one simple question every day. Am I improving? Even small improvement compounds over time. One new skill, one new lesson, one courageous action. These tiny steps eventually create massive transformation. But the mind often resists small progress because it wants instant results. And when instant results don't appear, the mind says, see, this isn't working. That is another mental trap. Real growth is gradual. Success rarely appears overnight. But consistent effort over time creates results that seem almost magical. Now, let me talk about another powerful way your mind can work against you. Your mind absorbs the environment around you, the conversations you hear, the media you consume, the people you spend time with. All of these influences quietly program your thinking. If you surround yourself with negativity, criticism, and pessimism, those patterns begin entering your own thinking. Your mind begins echoing what it hears most often. But if you surround yourself with ideas about growth, possibility, learning, and discipline, your thinking begins expanding. This is why personal development is so powerful. Books, educational content, meaningful conversations. These inputs reshape your mental patterns. They introduce new beliefs, new strategies, new perspectives. Over time, those new ideas begin replacing the old limitations. I often tell people this: your mind is like a garden. If you don't plant positive seeds, weeds will grow automatically. Negative thoughts are the weeds. Doubt, fear, excuses, procrastination. These weeds grow naturally if the mind is left unattended. But when you intentionally plant seeds of discipline, optimism, and determination, those seeds eventually dominate the garden. And the results show up in your actions. Because thoughts always influence behavior. This is why mental mastery is not something you do once. It is something you practice daily. You guide your thinking. You challenge negative patterns. You feed your mind better ideas. And over time, the internal battle becomes easier to win. But there is one more critical concept I want you to understand before we move forward. Your mind respects evidence. The fastest way to build a stronger mindset is through small acts of courage. Each time you do something difficult, each time you step outside your comfort zone, each time you keep a promise to yourself, you give your mind new evidence. Evidence that you are capable. Evidence that you are disciplined. Evidence that you can handle challenges. And once your mind begins collecting that evidence, your identity starts shifting. You stop seeing yourself as someone who hesitates. You start seeing yourself as someone who acts. And that identity shift is incredibly powerful. Because once you believe you are the kind of person who takes action, your behavior begins aligning with that belief automatically. But remember this, your mind will not change overnight. It has been programmed for years by experiences, influences, and repetition. Changing it requires patience, consistency, awareness. But it is absolutely possible. And the moment you start mastering your mind, something remarkable happens. Your fears shrink, your confidence grows, your goals become clearer, and your actions become stronger. In the next part, I'm going to share the practical mental training techniques that can help you take control of your mind on a daily basis. These are simple, powerful strategies that successful people use to keep their thinking focused, disciplined, and productive. But before we move on, I want you to pause and reflect. What is the one thought pattern that has held you back the most? Doubt? Fear? Procrastination? Overthinking? Write it in the comments below. Because the first step to mastering your mind is recognizing the patterns that have been controlling it. And once you see those patterns clearly, you are already on the path to breaking them. Now let's talk about the most important part of this entire conversation. How do you actually master your mind? Understanding the problem is powerful, but transformation begins when you start applying practical mental discipline every single day. I want to share several strategies that I've personally used and taught to thousands of people who wanted to take control of their thinking and dramatically improve their lives. The first strategy is mental awareness. You cannot change a thought you do not notice. Most people move through their day reacting automatically to whatever appears in their mind. A negative thought comes up and they accept it without question. But the moment you start observing your thoughts, something powerful happens. You create distance between you and the thought. Instead of saying, "I am not capable," you begin to notice that is a negative thought. This may sound simple, but it is extremely powerful. Because once you recognize a thought as just a thought, it loses much of its control over your behavior. The second strategy is conscious replacement. Whenever you catch a negative or limiting thought, immediately replace it with a stronger one. For example, if your mind says, "This is too difficult," you deliberately say, "This is challenging and I can learn how to handle it." If your mind says, "I might fail," you replace it with, "Every attempt teaches me something valuable." This is not about ignoring reality. It is about choosing interpretations that empower action instead of stopping it. Your brain learns through repetition. The more often you replace negative patterns with constructive ones, the more natural those constructive thoughts become. Over time, they begin appearing automatically. The third strategy is clear goals. Your mind performs best when it has direction. If you wake up without clear goals, your mind will wander toward distractions, worries, and random thoughts. But when you define exactly what you want to achieve, your brain begins organizing itself around that objective. I always encourage people to write their goals down. When you write a goal clearly and specifically, you send a powerful signal to your mind. It says, "This matters." And once your mind knows what matters, it begins searching for opportunities, ideas, and resources that align with that goal. This process is sometimes called activating your reticular activating system. The part of your brain filters information and directs attention. When you focus your mind on a clear objective, you begin noticing possibilities that were invisible before. The fourth strategy is visualization. Your brain responds strongly to mental images. When you imagine yourself succeeding, completing the goal, solving the problem, overcoming the challenge, your brain begins preparing for that outcome. Athletes use this technique constantly. Before competitions, they mentally rehearse success. They imagine performance in detail. And research shows that this mental rehearsal strengthens neural pathways in the brain. You can use the same principle in your own life. Spend a few minutes every day imagining yourself acting with confidence, discipline, and focus. Imagine yourself solving problems. Imagine yourself achieving the results you want. The more vividly you see it in your mind, the more familiar success becomes to your brain. The fifth strategy is controlling input. Remember what I said earlier? Your mind absorbs what surrounds it. So you must become selective about what you feed your mind. Pay attention to the information you consume, the conversations you engage in, the content you watch, the people whose opinions influence you. If you constantly expose your mind to negativity, your thinking will reflect that negativity. But when you feed your mind ideas about growth, learning, discipline, and possibility, your thinking expands. Great books, educational videos, constructive discussions. These inputs shape your beliefs over time, and beliefs shape behavior. The sixth strategy is keeping promises to yourself. This may be one of the most powerful forms of mental training. Every time you commit to doing something and follow through, you strengthen self-trust. Your mind begins to see you as reliable, disciplined, capable, but every time you break promises to yourself, your mind gathers opposite evidence. It says, "Maybe I don't follow through." So start small. Choose simple commitments. Wake up when you said you would. Finish the task you planned. Take the action you promised yourself you would take. Each time you do this, you reinforce a powerful identity. I am someone who follows through. And once that identity becomes strong, your actions start aligning with it automatically. The seventh strategy is taking immediate action. Remember earlier when I said the mind loves delay? One of the best ways to break that pattern is through immediate action. Whenever you have an idea that moves you toward your goal, take a small step right away. Make the call, write the plan, start the research. Even a small action sends a message to your brain that progress has begun. And once momentum begins, it becomes much easier to continue. Momentum is incredibly powerful. Action creates energy. Energy creates motivation. Motivation creates more action. But if you wait for motivation before acting, the cycle never starts. The eighth strategy is self-reflection. At the end of each day, take a few minutes to review your thinking and behavior. Ask yourself simple questions. What did I do well today? What did I learn today? What can I improve tomorrow? This practice strengthens awareness. It helps you notice patterns, and it turns every day into a learning experience instead of just another routine. Over time, this habit dramatically improves your decision-making and mental clarity. Now, here is something important to understand. Mastering your mind is not about eliminating negative thoughts completely. Negative thoughts will still appear from time to time. That is normal. The difference is that you no longer obey them automatically. You recognize them, you question them, and you choose a better response. That is what mastery really means. Control over your reactions, control over your direction, control over the beliefs that guide your life. When you reach this point, something extraordinary happens. Challenges stop feeling like threats. They begin feeling like opportunities to grow. Fear stops feeling like a signal to retreat. It becomes a signal that you are moving beyond your comfort zone. And your mind, the same mind that once held you back, becomes your most powerful ally. It starts generating ideas, solutions, creative strategies. Your focus sharpens. Your discipline strengthens. Your confidence grows because you trust your ability to handle whatever appears. And here is the truth I want you to remember. Every great achievement in human history began in someone's mind. Every invention, every business, every breakthrough, it started as a thought. But the difference between people who change their lives and people who stay stuck is simple. Some people learn to master their thoughts. Others let their thoughts master them. So the real question is not whether your mind is powerful. It absolutely is. The real question is who is in control? You or the habits your mind developed over the years. Because once you take control of your thinking, the possibilities for your life expand dramatically. Your goals become achievable. Your confidence becomes stable. Your actions become consistent. And the life you once imagined slowly begins becoming reality. So starting today, I want you to make a decision. Observe your thoughts. Challenge limiting beliefs. Replace negative patterns. Feed your mind with stronger ideas. And most importantly, take action even when your mind tries to hold you back. Because your mind can be your greatest enemy until you master it. And once you do, it becomes the most powerful tool you will ever have. If this message inspired you, write this in the comments. My mind works for me. Say it. Declare it. Repeat it. Because the moment you begin training your mind with intention, discipline, and purpose, your entire life begins to move in a new direction.